next guest has been filling our lives with laughter for over 4 decades. He's won BAFTAs, staged West End shows, created all your favourite things on the telly, and now he's telling us all about it in his new book, What Have I Done?, which is out this Thursday. So please welcome the 10 out of 10, Ben Elton!
He really is. An absolute legend in the house. Finally, he's written his own life story. Ben Elton, What Have I Done? 480 pages. How do I know? Because I read every single one yesterday. How are you, Ben?
I'm very well, and that intro has made me feel so good because, you know, I had a moment on the tube coming in this morning.
Yes.
This is a genuine fact. I'm not lying to you. For the first time in my life, a young lady offered me her seat. I was standing on the
Well, that happened to me a couple of years ago.
Did it? That's the first time it's happened to me.
The lady wasn't that young.
No, mine was about 30, 35, which is young to me.
Yeah.
But it was quite a surprise. I genuinely, you don't go around thinking you look like an old man.
Did you say I'm all right?
Yeah, I did, because I actually I've got a thing I always stand on the tube. I like to engage my core. It's like, it's a little bit of a free exercise. If you stand and I have my hand hovering near the pole, so if there's a jerk,
yeah,
I can. But I try and sort of surf the tube, not on the top.
I'm a tube surfer.
Yeah,
and if you close your eyes, you can feel the ups and the downs.
Exactly, and engage your core and not be quite such an old man. But she offered me a seat.
And we're not old, we're just older.
We're just lovely.
We've got to be careful with that, because older people, when we say we're old, they get really annoyed, and I get it. Listen, I can go anywhere with this book. I can literally go anywhere. I can go anywhere. How about the pity snog in the back of a cab with Emma Thompson?
There are some stories in this book. I tell you what, I said to my daughter, said, "Well, what's the book like, Dad?" I said, "Well, I'm doing what your generation says. I'm standing in my truth." And she said, "Yeah, it sounds like you're going to be up to your neck in it. I hope you're ready for it." So yes, there's a lot of good stories. That's true. I first met Emma when we were both just 22 on a show that didn't really work called Alfresco. It's when I met Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie as well, and Robbie Coltrane. So there's a lot of good stories. One of which is I fell in love with her. There's no doubt about it. We'd been working together, and she was just such a lovely person. But just one day I woke up and I had this massive crush. And I remember Stephen and Hugh saying, "Oh, for God's sake, not you as well. Everybody falls in love with Emma in the end, even the gay ones." And every man falls in love. So yeah, it didn't last that, but it was quite intense. And yes, I asked her, "Do you mind if I mention what I believe was a pity snog?" And she said it was not a pity snog. It was very nice, but it was a one-off. In the back of a taxi many years ago. She's interviewing me tomorrow at Ely Cathedral, which is very kind of her, about this book, and I'm quite sure she'll bring the snog up as well.
Was it pity? Was it petty? Well, it was in there, regardless of what it was. And you talk about meeting her on Alfresco. I can't remember Alfresco. It ran for 2 years. It was a pretty decent attempt by ITV to get something funny on the telly.
Yeah, it was in the aftermath of Not the 9 o'clock news. I mean, sketch shows were huge in those days. So good to see Rob and David bringing sketch shows back. I was thrilled about that, loving the new Mitchell and Webb. But back then, they were big telly news, and ITV were trying to assemble a kind of Not the 9 team to try and, because Not the 9 was Ryan Atkinson, Mel Smith, Griff Rhys-Jones, Pamela Anderson, and they couldn't just go to Oxford and Cambridge, which is what sort of used to happen a lot. But they had got Stephen, Hugh and Emma, who were from the Cambridge Footlights, and of course were also genuinely brilliant. That's why they got the job, obviously. But they wanted to spread the net further, and they originally went to Rik Mayall, because my dear friend, the late departed, but he was too busy with Kick Up the 80s. So one of the many good things Rick did for me in my life is he recommended me to Granada, and they took a look at me and invited me along, and that's how I got to be part of this sketch show, Alfresco, which didn't really work, even though, as I say, me, Emma, Stephen, Hugh, Robbie, seldom has a show been less than the sum of its parts in a more definitive manner.
Because, like you say, all the ingredients were there.
I talk about it quite a bit in the book. Well, give it a few pages. I think it's because of the writing. It was an absolute microcosm of my personality and Stephen and Hugh's personality. We were expected to write the show. Stephen and Hugh had been writing a lot of sketches for all their sketch work, and I was already a stand-up. Nobody was really looking to Emma to write. Funnily enough, which of our team ended up winning an Oscar as a writer? It was Emma, but I guess it was a more sexist society in those days. And Emma wrote a little bit, but mainly it was me and Stephen and Hugh, and they wrote bit, and I wrote a lot. And every day I'd come in with more and more sketches. I've written 60, and they're all brilliant, which is me, you know. That's why sometimes people raise their eyebrows. I can't help it. I love, you know, they weren't all brilliant, but I thought they were when I wrote them. And Stephen and Hugh would do the exact opposite, and they'd go, well, we've done half a sketch, but it's probably nonsense, and you probably shouldn't even read it. And so there was a big imbalance. Basically, I wrote too much, they wrote too little, and I think in the long run there was probably 30% good in that sketch show, and there needs to be 60 or 70% good in a sketch show to make it. You can have a few duds, but we just had a few too many duds, and I wrote most of them.
Shall I just point out now that Pamela Anderson wasn't in Not the 9 O'Clock News, it's Pamela Stevenson.
Pamela Stevenson, I'm so sorry. I know it was Billy's wife. Billy,
maybe she was.
Dear, she wasn't.
Maybe that was an episode
dear
that I didn't see.
Pamela Anderson. I don't know. I know Billy somewhere. I'm a huge fan. I talk about that as well in the book.
You do indeed.
Anyway, yes, Pamela.
There are 5 visitations in the book about America, about going to America, having a go, coming back, having another go, coming back. I mean, it is fascinating. Is it true that Warner Brothers still own one of your stories and has done for 25 years?
Yes, Popcorn. The Popcorn, my novel, my fourth novel, which there was a lot of movie interest in Popcorn. It was a film about kind of their idea that copycat violence, that, you know, if a director makes a kind of slasher movie, then that makes people more likely to become slashers or whatever. And that was what the novel was about. And a lot of movie interest. And in fact, it started off with a guy called Joel Schumacher, who was a huge movie, and that didn't quite get made. But then, big news, Ridley Scott was going to make Popcorn. I'm not kidding. I had meetings with him. It's going to be great. But anyway, things moved on. But during that time, he said, if you're going to do it with me, it's got to be a Warner's movie, because I've got a 5-picture deal with them or something. They have to acquire it. And so they acquired it, and they've still got it. And there was no turnaround deal, and it's still in the vaults, and they won't give it back.
I love that.
Because there's this thing, this dog in a manger attitude. If the bloke who's now head of scripts in a vault at Warner Brothers, he doesn't know who I am. He's never heard of Popcorn. But he knows if he releases that script for, I don't know, a few grand or whatever, you know, I've offered to buy it back, even though they didn't pay for it in the first place. I just gave it to them. He knows if he lets me have it back and it's a hit, then he's the schmuck. He's going to lose his job. So he'd rather just sit on it. They will not release it.
Happens all the time. Jeffrey Katzenberg, who is he? And give us the headlines of your experience with him.
Oh, well, there's a story. Well, the day I was kidnapped by Shrek. Oh, well, it's a long chapter.
I didn't know you wrote Shrek. But Ben Elton wrote Shrek.
No, I did not write Shrek.
You wrote some of it.
I wrote a few lines of Shrek because there was the director, Andrew Adamson, the director of Shrek, was a Kiwi. So he knew all about the Young Ones and Blackadder, because in New Zealand, the British culture was still big when he was a kid. So he knew about me. And when he was doing Shrek 2, he wanted somebody to sort of bump up the gags a bit. And he said to the big Americans, Katzenberg, probably the most important movie maker, well, him and Spiel, you know, the top 3. Dreamworks, for goodness sake. And they invited me over. It's a long, very good story with a lot of rudeness in it, not from me, I can assure you. But in the long run, I got to see an early cut of Shrek, and I started giving my notes, and Katzenberg kind of almost imprisoned me and said, you've got to sit here and tell us exactly what you think. Long story short, eventually I got a chance to write my own movie at Dreamworks, and I turned it down. What the Shrek was I thinking? I had 2 young kids. He would have. They make you go and live with them. Dreamworks is like a factory. You have to be there. They bring you over, and you're there for as long as it takes. And I just didn't have that part of my life available. So anyway, after a lot of toing and froing, I sat down with the, you know, this huge Hollywood executive. And I told him I couldn't do it, and he just got up. We were in a posh hotel room, and there was a bowl of petals, rose petals, between us on an occasional table, and he got a handful of them, and he dropped them over my head.
So sprinkled them?
No, he opened his palms, and this shower of petals fell on me, and they got lodged in my glasses and in my shirt, and he left the room with a shrug. And I think what he was saying was, I've offered you the world, I've offered you America, and if you won't take it, you know, then I'm done with it. Look, I'm not saying it was a curious gesture. He was wonderful to offer me this opportunity. I think I was right to say no. It's a long story about why I said no. We had some worries about the kids at the time, whatever. But yeah, it was an interesting experience. Dealing with Hollywood at that level of power is scary, and you do have to remember who you are when you go into those rooms.
From Shrek to Shrug, I love that.
See what you did there.
De Niro, Denzel, and Keanu, right?
The the book isn't all name dropping,
No, but I
I've
love
met,
this.
I've met a
I
lot.
need to engage people.
Yeah.
I think it's good
Yeah.
stuff because this is not Elton.
No.
This is not.
And it isn't name dropping because
Yeah.
they're all good stories. I could have dropped a lot more names, but I only did it when I had a good story. And because Denzel and Keanu and Michael Keaton, those stories come from the set of Much Ado About Nothing. Because I was very lucky. Ken Branagh, who is a very dear and very old friend, what can I tell you? I knew him before he was, well, not quite before he was famous, but he knew me before. Anyway, whatever. He offered me the part of Verges. That was funny in itself. I was in Australia where I was with my then girlfriend, and he rang up and he said, Ben, I've got the best part. It's written for you. It's Verges in Shakespeare. No one can play it but you. I'm going to be honest. The reason I'm offering it is no American will take it. So I got the part, and I got some great stories working with those huge stars. I mean, I can't tell them because they're too good to rush. But De Niro I met originally because he was working with Ken, again through Ken, on Frankenstein. And there's this dinner where he stole all our food. I was very lucky to be invited to dinner. There was Helena Bonham Carter was there, the cast of Frankenstein, and Ken and De Niro. And he ordered, everyone ordered, and when it got to De Niro, he said to this poor girl, this is in England, he said, so what's good? And she went, oh, God, well, it's all good. He said, just get the chef to send me something, whatever he wants. Now, obviously, in New York, that's what they do, you know. The restaurateur comes out, Mr. De Niro, can I offer you this, can I offer you that? But in England, that's not how we operate. And this poor girl didn't know what to do. Anyway, eventually just said, bring me some steamed vegetables. So he got steamed vegetables, and we all got our beautiful pastas and things. And then he just ate ours. He was leaning across, mopping people's plates up. Then Helena went to the loo, and while she was gone, he finished it off and even wiped the sauce with his bread. She came back. She said, "What?" She was furious. It was a real clash of cultures. It was a happy clash, but a clash nonetheless.
You've interviewed people. I mean, you gave yourself a bit of Russell Harty experience, didn't you, for a while? You interviewed the likes of Morrissey, Marilyn, Shane MacGowan. What was that show?
That was a weird experience when I was very young. God, you know, how fortunate can one bloke be? Early 80s, I was quite getting hip as a stand-up comedian. I was the Comedy Store compere. And ITV, regional ITV, this is the time when we had such a brilliant culture in this country that ITV was split into regional companies, and they were mandated to make local programming. So you get Look North, and that was just a unique show about northern culture, and you get London Weekend did South of Watford, which was just a culture show that just based on London, and I got to host it. And one week I was interviewing the lovely but strange men who fish for carp in London's reservoirs. The next week I'm doing something on what we then called gender benders. I only say that because it's a historical term. It was the Boy George Marilyn thing going on in the clubs, and I went and did that. And we did another one on post-punk psychobilly, and I interviewed Shane MacGowan, and Morrissey before they were really big. It was an interesting time and a fascinating job to get, but I was a writer and I couldn't keep it up, so I had to give that one up.
And you always wanted to be a writer. You know, as a teenager, you wanted to be a writer, and lots of people end up being writers and really enjoying it and making a great living out of it and changing the world because of it. But you very rarely read about them wanting to be a writer when they were like 11, 12, 13, 14. But you just wanted to be a writer.
Absolutely. I had a very brief period of wanting to be an actor when I was 10 years old, and I was in an amateur dramatics production of Peter Pan. I played Slightly Soiled, one of the Lost Boys.
And Oliver.
And I did Oliver. I played the Artful Dodger, and that was really a game-changing moment for me. And very briefly, I thought I'd like to be an actor. But almost immediately, when I started reading P.G. Wodehouse, and Noel Coward was 70 in 1971, and the BBC did a documentary about him, and I just thought, oh my God, to just write comic plays and have a life in theatre. So by the time I was 12, 13 at the latest, I knew I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to write in comedy, and I started writing. I wrote a full-length play when I was 15, and I put it on with my other students who, wound a few people up, as it necessarily does. I was Mickey Rooney. I've always been Mickey Rooney. I'm the guy who says, let's do the show. Hey, let's do the show right here. And then the cool kids will say, why are you bothering? It's so crap. And I was farty. I've always been eager to get on with it and put something on.
And is it true that you wrote the first episode of The Young Ones overnight? Yeah.
It was, again, it's not really a boast. It's just a fact. I've written stuff quickly and it's been no good, and I've taken my time and it's been no good. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. That was one time when it really shone. And of course, it was the inspiration of the genius of Rik Mayall. He rang me up one day in February 1981, and he was already getting very hip, and he said, "Farty, get to the pub. I want to talk to you now." And I loved Rik. I loved him. It really was a kind of crush, a sort of platonic crush. All I wanted to do was make him laugh and help him be funny. And so I rushed the pub, and he explained to me his very basic idea for the young ones, this sitcom based on a number of sort of nascent characters that were being developed by him and Aid and Nigel. And I was so excited. I went home and sat all night, and I wrote Demolition, which was the first episode. And in longhand biro, I still have the script. Rik Mayall and I read it together a few years before he died on a little documentary about comedy. I mean, obviously, the three people wrote the young ones eventually, but that first script, that was my moment. And I'm very proud of that, because a lot of what the young ones became was invented that mad night when I wrote Demolition. It pretty much word for word is what was broadcast.
And you were nearly in that too. Yes,
I need the story of who should play Mike and what the character of Mike was about.
The whole Mike thing
in the young ones is a long story. Look, I talk quite a lot about the writing, how Blackadder and the young ones came about, and my perspective. A lot of people have said a lot of things about those shows, and I've really never said anything very much. Nor's Richard, nor's Aid. Rik didn't much, but this is my book. I was 65 when I wrote it, and after 40 years, I've spoken a bit about how I saw its development, where I think there were mistakes made, and where I think it's not all me. I made plenty of mistakes. I think I've tried to talk about the process of creating comedy, the magic moment of improvisation. And Woody Allen spoke about comedy. He said, "When I write a joke, I'm hearing it for the first time." And what he's basically saying is you never really know where it comes from. I think when a painter puts a brushstroke on a canvas, they don't really know what it's going to look like. They're improvising. It's coming as they make it. There's that Ian Forster misquote, "How can I tell you what I think until I've heard what I have to say?" I think comedy is about, all creative inspiration is about allowing yourself to just roll with it. And sometimes the atmosphere is right for that, and sometimes the atmosphere is wrong. And the story of me and Rik's time working together, I think, is a good lesson on how comedy can and sometimes isn't made.
Full of surprises, the book. Talking to Ben Elton about What Have I Done, his autobiography. And one of the big surprises for me was you turning down the chance to have dinner with Mrs. Thatcher and sort of regretting it.
Oh, I regretted it at the time. I mean, look, I got to know Andrew Lloyd Webber very well. He's a dear friend of mine. He's a much misunderstood bloke in many ways. I don't agree with him politically, but I've got friends I don't agree with politically. But we wrote musicals together anyway. He's got a very impish sense of humour. And one time he said, we must get Ben round and have dinner with Thatch, because of course they lived on the same square. This is after she retired. Anyway, he wanted to have a dinner party, and he wanted to invite me and Mrs. Thatcher. And I said no. And I said no with great regret for a number of reasons. The regrets were because she's obviously the most important woman in politics in the 20th century, in British politics, a titanic figure. She changed Britain forever, not in many ways that I hated and I still hate. But I love history, and here was a chance to speak to history. Just because I didn't agree with how that history had gone didn't mean I wasn't fascinated. But the reason I said no was because I didn't want to like her. I knew she'd be nice. Everyone said she's fascinating company. She's a bit bossy, but God, she tells a good story and likes a whiskey. And I knew it would be quite a clubbable sort of experience. And I did not want to come away in a way. I knew Andrew would invite other people, and the idea of me, because I'm always polite. It wouldn't have been me. I'd have had to be nice, and she'd have been interesting, and I'd have been at her feet, and everyone would be saying, "Oh, there's old Ben, look at him now." I don't know, probably your listeners are thinking, what a kind of crappy reason not to do something really interesting. But in the end, I guess I just didn't want to end up being charmed by somebody who I think in the long run has had a deeply, deeply destructive effect on British society, despite never having believed that there was such a thing.
I knew about Thatch and the Thatcher years and your take on her and all the stand-up you did around it, because I was a huge fan at the time. I didn't know about the Alexei Sayle scandal. controversy?
Oh, it's not a scandal. I don't really want to. I wouldn't put it that way. Look, you know, Alexei was a tremendous artist and is a brilliant man, and it inspired a lot with me. But yeah, there was some edge. He found my ascendance very hard to take for a period, and was public about it. It's funny. I've never once in my whole life spoken about it. Certainly, I mean, publicly. I've written about it in the book, and I hope I've written with consideration and honour. I tell the truth, but I have nothing but in respect for Alexei as an artist and what he did.
Can I withdraw the word scandal?
Yeah, but it really isn't a scandal.
No.
I just talk about the fact
Sorry,
that,
that was lazy of me. I apologise.
Yeah, well, you've got every right to be lazy. You've been working very hard for the last 40 years, and you're an inspirational figure too, if I may say so.
So in a more upbeat kind of way, you were both at it. You were both left wing, but he was the only one doing it for a while, and then you did a similar but not the same thing, and that was what was going on there.
I think we were incredibly different. I mean, Alexei's material was very much surreal. It was a series of kind of brilliantly erudite non sequiturs. My material was kind of, based on a kind of principle and observation. I wasn't kind of a poet comic. I mean, his was about the words, how they all sounded together. I was kind of about the ideas. But look, I mean, I talk about a very difficult time for me when this very powerful, very intimidating, extremely impressive figure seemed to kind of have turned on me. And it wasn't easy to deal with, but it all turned out right in the end. And I hope if he reads it, I've read a couple of his books. I've no idea whether he's read any of mine. If he does read it, I hope he'll think, well, fair play, because I certainly haven't settled any scores. I've just talked about what was quite a difficult thing for me to deal with.
Well, you could not have gone there, and you went there, so it's important.
I've talked about it I've talked quite a bit about some of the times I've walked into trouble by my over-enthusiasm, not realising how I'm being perceived, and sometimes I've kind of perhaps deserved for people to raise their eyebrows, and sometimes I haven't. And on that occasion, I really don't think I did. I came in, I was writing the young ones, and I became a stand-up, and I think I kind of proved I had every right to do that by what I was doing.
What about the time that Jerry Halliwell asked you to write a Spice Girls sitcom, which sounds like the best idea that never happened?
Oh my God, wouldn't it have been wonderful? Because that film, that Spice Girls movie, which Kim Fuller wrote, I think that was pretty good. I enjoyed it. They were such fun, the Spice Girls. I mean, as you know, I talk about taking over from you to host the Brits. I cannot believe I was once so cool that I took over from you hosting the Brits. But yeah, I met the Spice Girls doing that, and they were, as you might expect, as absolutely lovely and mad, and they were kind of female monkeys. They were funny. They were funny gang. They were a gang. And one time I got this call from Jerry. She was actually on rollerblades. She said, I'm on rollerblades, and we should do a sitcom, and you and Richard should write it, or just you. Can you get Richard in? And I said, and Richard said, well, that'd be interesting. Because, we tried to do it with Madness about 10 years before that, and that hadn't worked.
Right in the middle of the Madness whirlwind.
Yeah, exactly. And, well, no, they were kind of on a slight tail end of their first fabulous ubiquity. God, I love Madness. They're lovely blokes as well. Anyway, the truth of the matter is, Jerry rang up and said, will you and Richard write as a Spice Girls? We will do it straight after the stadium tour. We want to do a sitcom. And I think it would have been wonderful. But like a week later, I turn on the radio and Jerry's left the Spice Girls. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what happened there? And
you have a few theories.
I have my theories about what happened there, but I have not shared those in the book.
Yeah, but you say that. You actually write that sentence. Yeah. I have a theory about this, but that's as far as it's going.
But that's the only time I think I tease something. I think I'm pretty honest. I share my truth on the whole, but not on that occasion.
You talked about February 1981 earlier on, and about the day that the sort of the Young Ones pilot was sort of like, here's a grand, get it written, and you wrote it overnight, and the next day you said it was written, and Rick's really? Yeah. But also, it was the 26th of Feb, wasn't it, 1981? Yeah. And it was a stellar day.
It was the day we got the commission. I mean, my pilot script had gone to the BBC, and they said they were going to make it. So that was the first That was extraordinary. That was my first ever commission. I was just 21, and it was a sitcom commission, shared with Rick and Lisa, of course, for the BBC. But that same day, I also auditioned for the comic strip, which was the cool version of the alternative comedy revolution. The Comedy Store was the rough and ready one, and Pete Richardson had famously taken all the best acts out of the Comedy Store and opened the comic strip about 2 months before. And I needed a job. I mean, we got $1,000 for that first Young One script, of which I got a third of it, but we didn't get it for many months. So I was broke, I was signed on, and I wanted to work in comedy, and the only conduit I had was myself. So I tried to become a stand-up comedian. I'd never had any ambitions to be a comedian, ever. I've written a lot of shows, I never put myself in any of them, the odd cameo once, but basically I think the proof that my ego, healthy though it is got nothing to do with me personally showing off, is that I've never put myself in my shows, I've never tried to act in other people's shows, I've never done adverts. I became a stand-up because I wanted people to hear my material, and I obviously wanted to try and make a living. So yeah, it was a big day, that, becoming a stand-up comedian and becoming a professional scriptwriter all on the same day.
Beautiful. The stories keep on coming. But were it not for Hitler...
Yeah, were it not for Hitler, I wouldn't exist. Yeah, there's a lot about that. I mean, my mother's history is very interesting. Well, I don't do an awful lot on my parents because, I mean... It's my story, and I had a very happy childhood, so there's not that much to talk about. But my father's life was very difficult as a young man. He was a refugee. My father's family were German Jews. They got out. Most of the family didn't, and the reason they did get out is fascinating and involved entirely cosmic luck, and of course, as ever with luck, the kindness of strangers. Nothing good ever happens without the kindness of strangers. And my existence obviously the reason my dad had to go to England, and that's why he met my mum, and that's why I exist, was Hitler. But the reason that he got out was the kindness of strangers, many strangers. And I talk about that and the experience of my father's post-Hitler German life, because we had a non-Jewish part of the family, and my father's cousin was adopted. He wasn't Jewish. I'm only half Jewish because my mother's not Jewish. Anyway, I don't identify as Jewish because I'm an atheist, and I think it's a religion. But look, I'm telling you 100 different things at once here. It's all in the book. But anyway, so we have a German family still because of my uncle. He only died recently, and he spent 6 years in the Wehrmacht. This is the madness of war. My two grandparents, my two grandfathers were on opposite sides in the First World War. My dad's father did 4 years in the German trenches, earned an Iron Cross, and only a few years later was running from the very nation he'd served because of fascism and racism. And my gramps was in the Royal Flying Corps. And then in the Second World War, my uncles were in the British Army and in the German Army in the Wehrmacht. But afterwards, both survived, and we were able to put our family back together again after the war. It's all in a book. Yeah, You've only got to read the book.
So many conversations going on inside your head. Oh, to be inside your head for 1 second. A couple of quick fires because we've run out of time.
Oh, no.
Give us 30 seconds on this one. Right, who is John Stone?
Oh, John, oh my goodness, he'll be amazed. He was a 17, 18-year-old at the college I went to when I was 16. I left home when I was 16, lived in a caravan in bedsits. It was quite a lonely, difficult life. And as I say, I was Mickey Rooney. I arrived at this A-level college where there were some drama kids, and I said, I'm putting on a play. Does anyone want to be in my play? And of course, I instantly was kind of rather loathed because I was so uppity. And John Stone was a cool second year who kind of saved me. If you want to know how it happened, it's quite a good story. I think it's in the book.
Who's Keith Thomas?
Oh, Keith Thomas he's currently the director of the Godalming Theatre Group, of which I am president, and he choreographed Oliver when I was only 14. A great supporter of me when I was a young person, and I'm very proud to still be president of the Godalming Theatre Group, which gave me so many happy memories back in the early 70s.
Yeah. Did you ever go to the Chinese restaurant, the Godalming in Godalming?
No, I don't think we did Chinese restaurants. I was very young. I was a teenager.
Just the name. I just love the name.
Yeah.
Godalming of Godalming.
Godalming. I don't know. Was that? I don't think that was around in the 70s.
No, I don't think it was.
No.
I don't even know if it ever existed. I used to live in Godalming.
Oh, did you?
And people talked about the Godalming of Godalming, and I think they might have made it up.
I think maybe they did. I don't remember that.
So there's a couple of crazy lines in the book. You call them out. You call your own crazy lines out. There is one about you becoming friends with George and Olivia Harrison. And then there's this one, which is even crazier than the first one. So I'll go to the second one. Sophie and I also became friendly with Paul and Linda. That's McCartney. We met them at George and Olivia's. That's Harrison's. It's all worth it just because of that, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, I aghast at my good fortune. For me, the Beatles are self-evidently not just the greatest popular artists of the 20th century.
But to know
the
them.
greatest artists, yeah. No, well, you know, it just came about through good fortune. It came about through Rik again. Same reason. Rik and I were big rock and roll fans. We went and saw a Carl Perkins gig. George Harrison was on stage with him, and afterwards George came up to me and said, "Thanks for keeping us amused in the 80s." And a friendship was born, and through that I met Paul and Linda, and that's obviously one of the greatest possible privileges of my life. I mean, I'd rather meet a Beatle than anybody. I mean, really, even if I could have Shakespeare and Churchill, I'd still rather meet the Beatles.
All right, mate. I think we're done.
And
we're
I
out
did.
of time. I hope you enjoyed talking about it as much as you enjoyed writing it.
I did enjoy writing it, more than I've enjoyed writing anything. It was nice going back and as I say, I'm not uncritical of myself in it. You'll certainly find there's plenty of that in it. But it's always nice talking to you, mate, and thank you for reading it.
You're very welcome. It's an honour to have you in my life still and on my show. I really appreciate it, Ben. Ben Elton, What Have I Done? His autobiography is out now. Let's hear it for Ben Elton. Come on.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed.
Absolute legend. A legend of this business tree. All right, it's 5 to 10 almost. We're almost done. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.